Go ahead, gang.
Okay. All right. Welcome to June 3rd Task Force meeting. Appreciate everyone being here. We are missing Charlie, but I don't have any word from him. Again, thanks to all the participants, residents, visitors, et cetera, who are logging on. Wanted to first apologize for the agenda. I just sent out another one. I keep making mistakes on certain names. So Jason and Michelle, I called you Eric and Melissa, then I called you Jason and Melissa, then I called you Jason and Michelle. So apologize. Thank you, Rebecca, for being so diligent in reading my agendas. The themes for today are monitoring criteria, public spaces, and town density. I wanted to go over the meeting last night for those who may or may not have been on it, and touch base on a few important notes. Phase 2 beaches will go into effect tomorrow. So I think that's a positive for the town. The 12-foot rule was enacted. I think that's also a positive. There was some question about Little Beach. So I want to clarify with the team here. There was some question that I took a unilateral decision on the Little Beach opening because the marginal way was opening, but I recall, we don't have minutes today, but I recall that we discussed it and said, if marginal way was open, the Little Beach should be open. Is there anyone that sees something different there? I think we worked together on that. It was not a unilateral thing. So a nod of the head. I think Little Beach being open because marginal way is open is, okay, I got thumbs up. Okay. We have guests today. They'll be from Parks and Recreation. And they're on the agenda in a little bit. And we're gonna discuss how we can be supportive of music in the park, something I know nothing about. So I will rely on the team members who know a lot about that to drive that discussion. The select board has decided that from this point forward, businesses, in particular, using public spaces, will have direct communication with the chamber and the town manager. The task force is no longer part of that process. So businesses are no longer in our purview. I think that would be the last of the business situations that we would have to take up. And we were about to take that up this week. We were talking about it last week, but it seems that they would cut us out of the process, which is fine. I'm no issue with that. That will speed up the opportunity for the businesses to hopefully get more space and work directly with the chamber. They asked us to look at fishing on the bridge and then directional walking on the bridge. And I guess we can hopefully we can take that up today and get a recommendation on that later on when we go into discussion of recommendations. I know nothing about fishing. I know when I go fishing, there's always someone next to me that teaches me how to fish and I catch one, but I don't know anything about doing it on my own. So again, people who know about fishing, that can maybe be helpful. There is one issue that came up regarding the marginal way, a clarification. So when we made our recommendation for the opening of the marginal way, you'll recall that we took Joan's very well thought out rules and provided them to the select board. And the rules stated wear face covering as a bullet point and social distance as a bullet point. There was some change in the motion and the ultimate outcome of what transpired in the select board, and the words changed a little bit. We're going to show you the actual rule as it's now printed on a sign. There was some question, is it required? Without any other qualification? Well, it is required, but with qualification. So Matt, if you can pull up that nice sign so we can all see that. So there is the sign. Pam, Pam brought this to us. Pam, any comments?
No, I was riding around to make sure that
signs were up, and I was pleasantly surprised that they were putting them up this afternoon when I was there, and felt the signs were very tasteful, and fit into the decor of the marginal way. Obviously, they do say mask required is 6 foot, physical distance can't be maintained. And that's everything that we've read and have been reading and have been talking about has been the mantra. If you are the only person on the marginal way, you don't need to wear a mask. If you are with 20 other people on the marginal way all around you, you need to wear a mask. And that's no different than anything else. So they were at all the entrances to the marginal way. So I think that's one thing we can do, a check off on our sheet, unless anybody else has any problems. I would have liked to seen something like this that spoke to for the beach is a little bit different. But that being said, I think this looks really nice. And captures
Any other
everything.
comment? Thank you, Pam. Any other comments on the sign? They do look very nice. So I apologize for any confusion I may have caused the last night. We had a lot of nice inputs. You know, people were very, very nice about asking for clarification, and so I think it's now clarified. So that was pretty much the meeting last night from our perspective. There was a lot of other stuff in there, but I think the biggest change for us is that we're not in the business very much anymore. And the beach is now in phase 2, and phase 3 is in the hands of the select board. And I think the Little Beach thing is in good shape. Buzzy.
If we're not in position to make decisions on expanding things that are going on in the Algonquin community, what are we in position to do here? Like, if they're expanding onto public property to do business, or I would think that would fall, whether the task force or the select board like it or not. We should say, wait a minute, whoa, what? I mean, what are we doing here? Checking out signs? It seemed foolhardy. I mean, it's a big decision. And I don't understand a decision of that size, and we don't have any input as the COVID task force, whatever our name is. What are we doing again? And that's it.
Thank you, Buzzy. Terry Ann.
I would just add to Buzz that it will affect town density and the ability to comply with social distancing in town if businesses expand to outdoor public spaces. So perhaps we can get some direction from the town. Buzzy, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if we're talking about direction of flow, we're going to close off public spots for private enterprise and we want to decrease public spaces I'm confused. Again, I'm confused why we're not, our opinion or our thoughts aren't even warranted or even asked for, or why this COVID task force, what are we doing if we're not going to say, yeah. I mean, we were talking about signs on the side of the road and we're working with things and within your own footprint. Now we're expanding and now we're not, that's the time we're not going to talk. Again, I'm confused. I think the task force is a little bit belittled by this because what are we going to do again? What's our purpose? Yeah, excellent.
Alice.
I was just gonna say, I was in and out of the car while Bob's presentation was going on, so I had it on my Bluetooth in my car. Then when I got home to my driveway, I had a little bit of a bumble in trying to get it off my phone and onto my laptop, because once I got out of my car, I couldn't even hear the speaker on the phone. So I missed a good part of like what Bob's and going back and forth with the select board. But I had emailed Bob this morning and Pat, and just said, okay, so what I think I understand is that Pat and Scott Highland now have the authority to work with the businesses. Like, for instance, if a business owns a parking lot and they want their neighbor to be able to use their space, then that's the sort of thing Pat can now bless, along with Scott as the code enforcement officer. But then the second part of it was, I said, okay, in terms of, because Pat had brought up, closing parts of Shore Road at various times in the spot we would have used for Bon Air, which was Shore Road from Route 1 to the Crooked Pine. And I said, in terms of working on those sorts of things, which still need to be approved by the select board, I'd recommend that we move that to the business subgroup of the task force. And then Bob was the one who got back to me a couple of hours later and said, no, the select board made it clear. So I totally missed that part of the select board meeting. So, I don't know, Bob, if you have any perspective on how that came about or why that came about, because I was surprised when you got back to me with that comment.
Well, yeah, the motion in 5.4 of their agenda was to open up spaces. The discussion was the chamber will work directly with the town manager in order to expedite changes to the code so that people can use certain spaces, because there are people in a disadvantage because they don't have their own space to put outside dining. At the same
That
time,
makes sense. Yep.
the select board said if there were to be any street closures, that would have to be brought to the select board directly from the chamber, who is considering those kind of closures. So you have basically two things that happened. And by the way, I was asked to stay for the 5.4, but never asked to comment. So maybe I should have commented, but I find that when I'm at the select board, I work at their pleasure or leisure or whatever it is. So 5.4 got approved, as the chamber will work directly with the town manager to review case by case people that need help in order to sustain their business. And if a street closure is to be made, the chamber will go directly to the select board, and the select board will have power to decide that. So that's how it ended for us. And you know what? I'm kind of gone. I didn't sleep much last night because I was like, oh, wait a second. We're the group that has the most wide diversity of opinion in the town, from
Right.
business to, and so I was kind of like, but then I said, this has got to get done quick because everybody wants it done quick. It would be more weeks if we were involved. We could have had a complete meeting around this issue today, made a recommendation next Tuesday, and then something gets done after that. So I kind of see both sides of the story, and you know what? It's fine. We got to people need help. So Rick, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I actually don't, from what I remember the meeting last night, I don't think it was the chamber who was going to be working with PAP. It's actually the individual business who has a request for that space. I didn't get the sense that the chamber was, the chamber can be there to support, or if the chamber has an idea. But I believe it was actually the individual businesses that have the need are the ones who are going to work with Pat and Scott. In my interpretation was not to shut out again, we all hear it from different perspectives, but I did not get the sense that we were being closed out of the conversations. I think it was the final say, and the final say is with the select board if we wanted to close part of Shore Road or something, but I don't think, and again, I'm not part of maybe got a different email or something today, but it came across to me like, okay, well, we still have to do our work and present some potential opportunities, but the select board did not want to just give Pat the free for all to just approve to close a major road. So that's kind of how I interpret that.
Pam.
I agree partially with everybody. Actually, Rick and I ran into each other at the post office today, and I said, "Where do you think that went?" And the whole thing was a one-off. It was one particular business establishment that was looking at using a couple of parking spots along Shore Road. The issue of closing Shore Road, the select board threw in. It did not come from this one particular business, nor did it come from this task force. To close either Shore Road or Main Street, those are public roads, those are state roads, and we would need to go to the state. Whoever did it would have to go to the state and get approval for doing that, and go through police and fire and everything else. So at the very end, I felt that we needed to it would have been nice to have some time to have at least put some input into this. I understand there was a time crunch for this particular incident, or not, it's not incident, this request, because they would like to open up as much space as possible in the short period of time that has been allotted since the governor pulled the rug out from everybody. So that was kind of what it is. And I did just happen to notice there was a chat that came up, and it looks like it was
From Pat.
from Pat. Is Pat on? And maybe she could clarify. Matt,
Yeah, I'm working on it.
I know she did a chat and it didn't finish, the whole chat didn't come through. And maybe if she's on the phone, she could, there she is.
Nice mask, Pat.
Thank you, designer. No, I appreciate everyone's angst here, but I really want to emphasize the purpose of last night's agenda item was to see if the select board was even open to allowing any public space to be used for a private purpose, because that is like something that is just not done in normal municipal government. However, given the extraordinary times we are in, a number of other towns have already done this. We wanted to consider whether or not that was going to work for us. So last night, the win was the select board said, yes, we are open to doing it, but staff is not going to do it on our own. We need you guys to help us guide this through. We need the chamber to help us get this through. We need working individually. So I think that the select board last night said I could work with an individual business to help them go out into an area if it made sense. But all the other big issues that you all are working with, I mean, the select board's going to want to hear from you. I think they didn't say that specifically because I think they took for granted that that's why they created the task force. So I think this is a huge issue, and that's going to take everyone working together on this. And I don't have all the answers, obviously. And I would like this to be more of a coordinated approach as opposed to this business gets to do this and this business gets to do that. I did meet with one business today, and we might do it as a trial just to see how something might work, to see if it's got some potential for something else. But the whole issue of congestion, that's the other reason why municipalities are looking at spreading out, is so that people will have more room to maneuver and get around. So I just want to make sure that I had sent the email to Bob last Friday to say it's going to be on the select board's agenda. I did not want anyone thinking it was an end run or cutting anybody out, but we can't say we're going to even consider using public space if the select board isn't open to that. And I didn't want people to put a lot of time and effort into that, only to find out that's a no-go. So happy to answer other questions as your meeting goes on, but I hope that clarifies it for everybody.
I have a question. I can move out my restaurant. I can move into the park. I can move out onto the sidewalk. I could put tables on the sidewalk is what you're saying.
Potentially, if
So
you,
every restaurant could move onto their sidewalk or onto any parking spot. Any restaurant, if it's good for one, every restaurant would be able to make a claim to a public spot, right?
that's the concept, but it's got to work for everybody.
How does it, explain how it works to some and doesn't work for, how it works to somebody and doesn't work for the other person? What are the criteria?
We haven't gotten there, Buzzy. We had to get permission to one. So,
Okay.
yeah.
We haven't got there yet. Okay,
Right.
but do you want our input on this? I'm just asking, do you want the input? So we should make a vote or make a motion on whether we think yay or nay on moving into public spots as a task force, you would say?
Well, I think the select board said yay, that they think it's a good idea to consider. If you disagree with that, certainly.
To consider, we should consider it. Is that what you're saying? Oh, okay, yeah. As long as we're in part of the loop of considering it, then that's all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. But I mean, to Bob's point, everyone knows time is of the essence, and usually municipal government does not work at lightning speed. You guys have worked at lightning speed, but the the gate that we had to go through last night was just to get the select board blessing to use public space. It's the people's space, basically. So, yeah. Thank you, Bussy.
Pat,
Rebecca,
Hi, Rebecca.
do you have any idea how many, I mean, my understanding of last night was that this was to provide a limited number of restaurants in town that had no outdoor space that they could use to potentially find some outdoor space. Do you have any idea? It didn't sound to me like it was that many restaurants where this would be considered. Do you have any idea how many you're talking about?
I think Alice does.
This is a really vague number, just based on a list that one of our members had developed for me that said basically how many of our member restaurants had outdoor, privately owned outdoor space, meaning they owned a parking lot or a driveway or a backyard or a front yard, whatever. And he made a list of about 20 restaurants. Now, I know there are 50 restaurants that are chamber members, and there are obviously additional restaurants that are not chamber members. So my ballpark guess for Pat, when we were talking yesterday, was maybe a third of the restaurants have open spaces. But I don't know if that's, I haven't actually gone through the business list in Ogunquit to figure out exactly what those numbers are.
Pam,
For Alice, you're saying a third of the restaurants do not have on their own property space for outdoor seating? Is that what I'm hearing you say? Or
I know that out of the 50, we have 50 restaurants that are chamber members. 20 of them, based on this one list that someone made for me, because I don't know all of their real estate, had 20 of them, 20 of the 50 had privately owned outdoor space they could move into. Now,
that they could?
yes. I
Okay,
don't know how many additional restaurants there are in town that are not chamber members, but there definitely are
okay.
that are not chamber members.
Because I've actually walked over the weekend, I walked pretty much the whole town and looked to see who may or who may not have their own property that they could use for outdoor seating. And it was, the numbers that did not were very small. Buzzy, you being one of them.
No, I have outside space. I have, my footprint is outside.
Right,
I have footprint outside. I have no parking.
no, but I mean, but there a couple that I thought didn't have anything, I found out later that they did. So, but the numbers that are, I couldn't find more than maybe three at the most that might not have property that they don't have that they could use the outside that for outdoor seating. So I don't think we're looking at a huge number here.
Are we talking about private using
Private.
someone using someone's private property? Someone
That's
renting
correct.
their land? Are we talking about using public?
Right now, I'm only talking about private.
Private.
I'm only talking
That's a
about,
whole different conversation, right? Let's
Right.
just be clear on that.
but that fits into the public. Because if you don't have private, then you would be looking at public. And I believe, at least I was led to believe that the discussion last night was for those businesses that did not have private space to move their restaurants outdoors, could the select board entertain using public space for seating for those restaurants?
Public space.
Public space, only public space, yeah.
So that we're gonna move out of the public space. We're gonna take up public space with private business.
That
We're
was my
gonna
understanding.
And just interesting. And I want to make sure so when you say that, so of these places, they have no parking lot, no yard. They're just a building square, and they just walk in the building and that's it, right? That's it. They don't have a parking lot over the side for the employee or the owner. They have nothing. They just have a walk in and straight up, right? No yard, right? Those people we want to move into public spots.
Correct. To the best of my knowledge.
Where's that? Wait, what restaurant is that? What place is that?
The example was Bessie's, that they
This
would,
has a parking lot to the south side. They have a parking lot. They have a couple person parking lot. Is there a sidewalk by Bessie's?
Yes,
Is there a sidewalk by Bessie's?
Yeah.
Are there tables on the sidewalk?
yes.
All right. So I don't want to get individual because this is beyond individual, but so Bessie's doesn't count. They have a parking lot they could use, right? So who else we worried about?
Down in Perkins Cove,
And so like who
Jack,
in Perkins Cove?
Lobster Shack, Footbridge Lobster.
Everybody.
So,
Lobster Shack wants to put tables outside?
no, they're not asking, but that's an example of somebody who does not have any outdoor
Oh,
space.
yeah, there you go. Yes.
So,
Yep. That's a good one.
With
Perfect.
today's ruling, or this week's ruling, so.
Yeah.
Alice, and then we'll try to wrap this up and
Yeah, exactly. I would say, to my knowledge, the only restaurant that's been in touch with the town is Bessie's. So I don't think we need to speculate about other restaurants, but the idea also is that if a business owned a parking lot, say a bank, and they don't need to use their parking lot for outside sales, could the bank then work with a neighboring business to allow a restaurant across the street to use their space? So that's also what this covers. And I think that's probably the first intention. And then only if there isn't any private space available or they can't partner with a neighbor to go outside, then they can get in touch with the town. And I think, Pat, you probably would have to prove that anyway, if two businesses wanted to work together to share that a space owned by another business. Because our first recommendation did not allow businesses to do that. So this allows businesses to do that and have the town approve it. And I think the last resort is, I have no private space. What can we look at for public? Is the way I understand it. And then anything that involved closing roads or setting up one-way directionals or anything more complex, clearly the select board wanted us to come back, I thought town task force, but us to come back to them with recommendations.
okay. So I think it's a complex issue. Personally, this is my personal opinion. It's said as a member of the task force, we could have a role here, but it would have to be on a case-by-case basis. I don't think there's anything we can do in terms of policy that covers the discussion at large. And I'm not sure that the select board wants to cede an opportunity for us to become part of each individual one-off situation. I mean, and that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. And that's fine. I think we could, as a representative body of the entire town, very diversified, we have representation of probably everything that occurs here, from business to residents, et cetera, to the most part. So we could do that, and that would be, that'd be a big, but it would be more time consuming, although we have proven that we can move fast. We can have 2 meetings in 1 week even. So I just, right now, I can't see personally as the chairman, how we get involved in this issue, because it is so specific, case by case. So, I mean, we could put out a resolution that says, we agree that you can go use public space and Pat will determine that, which I think is fine, but that's just waste of time. I mean, the select board has already said that. That doesn't help the matter. It just, we haven't evaluated it. We didn't look at it. We didn't analyze it. We just said, okay, we support that. But they've already made the decision, and that's fine. And that's what they get, that's what they get to do because they're the select board. So maybe we can talk more about this when the business team has its time. So we're gonna move on.
Can I
Yes, Pam.
just add just one quick thing on that? I do think that we could make a blanket statement, but going forward, time is of the essence, obviously, for the businesses and businesses that do not feel that they have enough space to get enough tables out there to survive. I think that with Pat being able to coordinate that with the restaurant or restaurants, she would have the input from the police and the fire, also for the safety, for if it's on a street, if it's on a sidewalk, and would need that input, which is something that we would get bogged down in those details right now. So I would prefer if it stayed just, the onesies with Pat.
Okay. Becky, last one, Becky.
Yeah, well, the only thing I think we can say is that if it's a situation that increases congestion, or a public space like a parking space is taken away for a restaurant to use, when we think it would be better to use that for extra space for a lineup, so people could line up more distant from each other, that, you know, some kind of broad statement in that regard, we could probably agree on, but we don't have to do it now.
Okay, thank you. We don't have minutes, so we're gonna move to Charlie. Any update that you have, Charlie?
I've got update.
Thank you.
I watched Dr. Shaw again today, and we had one death, a gentleman in his 70s in Knox County, first death actually in Knox County this through the COVID transmission. And that brings us to 95 deaths in Maine at this point. 2,418 cases in all, 2,152 confirmed, 266 probable, 40 remain in the hospital, 10 on ventilators. The recovered is almost 1,700, 1,699 recovered. The biggest concern I have that came up today with Dr. Shaw's press conference for the Maine CDC was he reported 13 people connected with Eldridge Lumber. He didn't give all the details, whether they worked there or whether they shopped there or whatever. But anyway, 13 individuals in York, Maine, somehow connected with Eldridge Lumber, have been found to have COVID-19. So that's big. And today was Wednesday, so he gave the current percentages, the positive testing, positivity rates, and they've gone down again. They were 5.2 last Wednesday. They're down to 4.97%, so just under 5%. So we're going in the right direction, especially when you consider nationally it's at 10%. Massachusetts is at 17%. Rhode Island is at 9%. New Hampshire is at 6%. Vermont's the only other New England state that has less than us. They're at 3%. New York is at 17%. New Jersey is at 20%. Connecticut is at 16%. So we're heading in the right direction. And what he also said was that they've done almost 10,000 tests at this point, and the positivity rate, they thought might go up, but it's actually going in the other direction, which is really good. We still have a lot of capacity as well. There's several ventilators not being used. The ICA, there are 394 ICU beds, and a very small fraction of those are being used. Same with ventilators. There are 315 ventilators, but a very small amount of those are being used. The other thing he brought up that I thought I might mention is pre-symptomatic people. We talk about asymptomatic people, but the pre-symptomatic people seem to be more of a problem in that you can have COVID-19 and not show any symptoms for 2, 3, sometimes as many as 4 days. And you're passing it on to other people in that pre-symptomatic phase. So anyway, that was very interesting to me too, and I thought I'd let you know about that. So that's it.
Thank you, Charlie. Any questions for Charlie? Any comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the all-important update from the field. Matt.
Well, so today's update similar to last week's update, I would say, with the addition of the marginal way being open this past Monday. I would say that it hasn't been particularly busy on the marginal way from our reports from our CSOs as well as camera observations. We have had a CSO out there with a supply of masks to offer or to give to people if they don't have them and they're not able to be appropriately distanced. They reported he gave out 20 masks yesterday when he was out on the Marginal Way. So I thought that was a good indicator that there are some people out there who didn't have a mask, and we were able to provide them with one through some generous donations from an individual in town who provided us with some surgical masks to give out to our elderly population, as well as those who might need them, as well as our own internal supply of PPE. The beach, I would say, was not particularly busy either. There were a few days when it was a little bit nicer, when there may have been a greater flow of people, but definitely I think mostly people were appropriately distanced, and certainly nothing approaching what I would call summer crowds were out there. We have started using the electronic signs to post tide information as well, to give people an idea when high tide is. We post the two high tide cycles on both signs. So those people who are at all familiar with the beach know that our space becomes very much limited at high tide and is enormous at low tide. So we're able to use those signs to sort of help people gauge beach status. Other than that, we are working on ordering more permanent signs for the beach, as far as the new rules starting tomorrow. We'll have temporary signs up in the interim, but we're getting signs similar to the Marginal Way to put up at the beach entrances and the bridges and the overpasses. And our turnaround time is getting better than it had been. So it started out great. It lagged a little bit when the whole world started ordering signs, and we're back to a better place for signs now. So I think we can have something in place hopefully early next week. For as far as a more permanent basis, we'll have temporary signs up. And any input you guys would like on those signs about how you'd like them to look, like the Marginal Way signs, or what differences you'd like, we're happy to take, because I'll be putting in the order for the longer duration signs later this evening. So if anybody has any suggestions on those, happy to hear those. Pam?
Matt, can you give us, it sounds like you have a template for a sign already, is that correct?
Well, not a template per se, just I know what the rules are. And I was going to try to create one sort of sign that would go up on all the entrances, kind of like the Marginal Way, where we would talk about essentially really push the two wear a mask and the social distancing. The one rule that they came up with was 12 foot from groups.
And that was that's sitting groups. That's not walking groups.
Yeah, it just gets, I know, I understand it. It's hard to articulate.
Which is hard to put on a sign.
Yeah, and people are so used to hearing 6 feet over and over. I don't know exactly how you guys, you envision it, but happy to hear suggestions or what you think on those signs. But as far as from the field, just real quick, no, we didn't have to, we issued no citations. We did speak to some people on the beach who were sitting, and most of them were moved along. Some indicated that they had reasons they couldn't. And the other biggest challenge was the estuary side, or the riverside, but that will be alleviated for us officially tomorrow.
Matt, is it possible, so that we can be efficient with our time today, and we do have two people waiting that want to talk to us about the arts in the park and the performances, if you have a draft that you could send to everybody on the task force, and then we can quickly turn around tomorrow with our ideas?
Yeah, I'll send out a draft or a proposal signed this evening to you folks. And if
That'd
you
be
want to say, yeah, this, no, this, or add this, happy to make those changes and get it off to our sign maker.
Thank you very much. And I see Terry Ann. I have another question, but Terry Ann's got her hand up there, so I'm going to let her go.
So I I have two suggestions. One is, I think it's really important to make it clear that face coverings when you can't social distance, right? Because I think part of the confusion at the beach with the temporary signs are, and I've heard this over and over again from people on the beach, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to wear a mask on the beach, you know? So I think the marginal way sign was great. You know, if you can't social distance, please wear whatever it says. The second thing to think about the 6 feet, 12 feet, and this is just it's conceptual, so maybe this will help you think about it. But what we're talking about, it's like a 6 foot diameter for a group. So if you have two groups and they're each 6 feet, you know, each are 6 feet away from one another, that's where the 12 feet comes from. So you know, if you draw two circles, right, that from the across, each one is 6 feet, when you put them next to each other, and that may be the visual, 2 6-foot circles with little people in them, that's where the 12 feet comes from. So, you know, I'm not sure how to do it, but maybe drawing those 2 circles with little people inside each one, and 6 feet across, six feet arrows across might help people understand what we're trying to get at the 12 feet.
Now, just for my own clarification, the 12 foot, that's a recommendation from your committee, or that's a recommendation from like the CDC?
It's being, so it's actually what's being utilized by all the beaches in Massachusetts, along the Cape Cod shore and other beaches. So I don't know if you can see it, but it kind of would look like 2 circles like this with a diameter. And I do believe the recommendation did come. So it would be 6 feet, 6 feet, and then just put little people in it. Put little people in it. That's where the 12 feet comes from. Just.
And then one quick follow-up from, just so I can, I understand the drawing, but what are we telling people who are spaced out 6 feet at tables in restaurants?
We're not talking about restaurants. We're just talking about the beach.
No, I know, but if you're saying that restaurants, their tables have to be spaced out, so people are 6 feet apart outside or inside even.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have to ask Alice about that, because I don't know the details of the recommendations that were made the main CDC. I'm not familiar with it. I didn't review it, so.
I'm happy to make the sign say whatever. I just wanted, I like a consistent message across the board.
So I'm confused now, and I'm confused. In geometry, if you have circles that are together and they're 6 feet across, and you're in the middle of the circle, that means it's 3 plus 3. It means your social distance is 6 foot. The circles from one circle to the end, each side, is 12 foot. I thought we had, what I read in Massachusetts was they were 12 foot apart. The circles were 12 foot apart, like they are in some parks in Central Park and other places.
Yeah.
And then the design was, if you got outside your own circle, you were still within the 6 foot distance. So
yes.
Now I think we have a whole can of worms here, because it's
Oh,
not
no,
12.
You're right. It is 12 feet. You are absolutely correct. I drew it wrong. What you said is correct, Bob. 12 feet.
Okay. So if you have groups, if you have 2 groups, let's not talk circles because we're not drawing circles. If we have 2 groups sitting in squares.
Right.
From one square to the next square, what they're doing in Massachusetts is a 12-foot distance, so that when children are running and everything, you have this extra space to maintain that 6 foot interval.
Yeah. Yes.
That when you breathe heavy, your excuse my French, phlegm is moving in the 6-foot circle, 6-foot area and not infecting anyone.
Yes, I shouldn't have had them up against each other. I should have had them. No, you're
That's
correct.
what if you go and look at the circles in the parks, and circles are, they are not together, they are separate by a distance of some factor. And in most cases on beaches, it's been 12. And I think
So-
that's what our recommendation was.
Yes,
Okay.
and you could probably go online and see what they're using as a symbol in Massachusetts, right? Or in Central Park and use the same thing.
Okay, so Matt, you put together what you think you understand from this, and then, and we will review it tomorrow quickly.
Okay.
As a group, and through individual contacts. And I will be the clearinghouse, and I'll bring the final to what's tomorrow, Thursday?
Tomorrow is Thursday.
Golly, okay. I wanted to have a day off. So we'll get this, Matt will send us out, we'll get input, we'll send back the input through me and leave it at that, and we'll see how it goes. Rebecca,
I just got a little bit more input about the Marginal Way from Joan Griswold. One of the members of the Marginal Way, Gail Brother, is going to have access to the counts and is happy to supply them for us. And also I spoke to Paul Green from the Marginal Way Preservation Fund, and you can actually go on their website and look at their webcam. They have 2 Zooms that show people walking on either side of the Marginal Way. So I don't know whether Matt would be interested or Pat, but I suspect that there could be a small group of volunteers either from the webcam or observe on the Marginal Way. The Gail and Joan were doing that yesterday, and they didn't find 70% of people wearing masks, but it wasn't that crowded as well. So when it gets more congested, it might be useful to have some actual numbers from them.
thank you.
I have one quick question for Matt before Matt finishes his up from the field, update from the field. I'm trying to keep our COVID-19 task force update on the website up to date. Do you have any information yet as to which parking lots are going to be open as of June 4th? And if of any of them, are they going to be charging for parking? Because one of the things, a lot of chatter I'm hearing is, hey, free beaches in Agunquit, we don't have to pay for parking.
I will get you the information on the specific planned opening dates for each of the lots. I know there is, we did a visitor services meeting today and about ramping up, but I'll make sure that you guys get the information on which parking lots are doing what and when.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Anything else? Appreciate your time.
No, all set. Thank you, guys.
Okay. And Matt, you're always welcome to come on video if you want to.
I think I'll spare everyone that.
Okie dokie. Okay, we're gonna move to
Okay.
music in the park. So can we get Jason and Michelle? I got the names right.
I'll queue them up. Just give me a sec.
I'm sorry, Jason and Michelle, that I didn't send you the agenda because I don't have your email addresses. And if you want to send me their email addresses, I won't do that again. There's Michelle. Hello, Michelle. I called you Melissa in the agenda. I apologize.
I get that a lot.
Yeah, well, I crossed over 63 on Monday, so I'm gonna use that as my excuse. Okay, and Jason, who I called Eric on the further agenda.
No problem at all.
Jason and Michelle. So please, you have the floor.
Parks and Recs. We've been Parks and Recs co-chair, and anyway, we've been putting this Music in the Park event in Algonquin for the past 4 years. Obviously, we start this early fall of 2019 to try to put bands together, contracts. This year, we worked really hard because it was supposed to be a combination of a relationship with the chamber and putting together a 40th anniversary Bon Air event combined. Obviously, that didn't take place on June, I believe, 13th. But we did have a full list of events going on that particular day, with closing down the street, having vendors. And so, unfortunately, with everything that's been going on, we've been kind of working as best as we possibly could, putting things on hold. But now we're at that point where we've been approached by several people in town saying, hey, what's happening with Music in the Park? You know, things aren't lined up, and I've told all my vendors, I said, we've got to sit and wait and figure out what's going on with the virus, and that's priority, is safety. So currently we have 11 events planned for Music in the Park starting on June 28th. And that location is the Dorothea Grant Common, which is off of Obed's Lane in front of the Heritage Museum. As I mentioned, it's the 4th year that we do it. It's on Sunday afternoons. It basically reaches out to people within our community as well as people from outside of our community. We've been, what we try to do is try to keep the restrictions down. Not restrictions, but let me take that back. Trying to keep attendees down so that we can be socially distant. And I reached out to the assessor's office this afternoon. The entire park is 7.6 acres. The location of where Music in the Park takes place is 40,000 square feet. What we'd like to do is actually get the task force to potentially give us some ideas and some suggestions so that we can move forth in keeping things safe. There's a porta pod, actually 2 of them we actually put in, one handicap and one for just a standard one. I know that they've been doing that. It was brought up last night. We do our annual kind of a demonstration in front of the select board, but during that time, when Robert was there doing his presentation, I kind of looked at, chatted over to Michelle and said, well, perhaps we should go to the task force. And that's why we pulled back a little bit. And I believe that your opinions are important so that we can get your ideas so that we can make sure that our community is safe. And so that's why we're here today. So there's a couple things regarding town has suggested that we definitely could get some signage, keeping people socially distanced. I know Dolores Park in San Francisco does the Music in the Park. They do circles, 8 feet diameter, 10 feet apart. If we do the 2 feet extra, that's not a problem. There's space for us to accommodate that. What else do we have? The other idea that we talked about is possibly doing some virtual. We do have a lot of elderly that actually attend our events in the summer. And so we want to bring that to them. So we talked about possibly getting WOGT or hiring a company to come in to videotape so that we can provide this entertainment, kind of changing pace. I mean, we've been all locked up. We all feel like it's time to bring some sort of entertainment and fun and music to kind of hopefully move forward a little bit, taking small steps. So out of the 11 bands that would be performing this year, all in the same location, I say bands, out of the 11 events, 2 of those events we've talked about there'd be 9 bands, and then the following 2, actually I take it back, 10 bands, and 1 evening would be a small band, and then following with a movie in the park that would take place in that space. So I'm open to questions. Michelle is still on if she has any other input, but I think that's kind of where we're at this point.
Kent.
Hey, Jason
Yeah.
and Michelle, do you have any historical data per event on the attendance? What do you expect for attendance at your events this year?
It depends on who's performing. I mean, usually our biggest event is the Elvis show. And that we've seen numbers as strong as 200. Other bands that are not as popular, we've seen as low as 25. You know, again, we keep this all outside. There's sometimes we've had some rain. You know, we can't prevent that from happening, but we've brought it into the Dunaway Center where it's, you know, been like 20 people. But still, we're still reaching out to those 20 seniors, and I'll tell you, or whomever, it's just, you know, people leave there with a smile, and that's our objective.
Yeah, the rainy days are probably, we see the lowest attendance, but on average, I would say it's roughly 100 people or so in the park. We know we'll be limited as far as, you know, what's actually allowed for gatherings. We'll have to keep it under 50, which is why we were talking about live streaming the concert so that people could stay safe at home who want to and still be able to enjoy a little bit of our community entertainment.
Pam, and then Rebecca, please.
Yes, I do know that the governor still says it has to be under 50, and that does include the actual musicians and everything too. But I was looking at the business and the retail, if you had a store that was 40,000 square feet or a little bit over that, you would be between 45 and 70 potentially. If you were 40,100 square feet in just the area where the you would actually be there, if you can have as many as 70 customers. So I know we're not real retail because you're not selling tickets or anything. So I think I would go for some guidance, or I would like to see some of the guidance that the state has put out about large gatherings. And I know I don't have that in front of me. I was looking through my stuff because I didn't print that out. But I know they've come out, they've issued it at the end of May for large gatherings.
You might want to also check with the town of Wells. They're moving forward with their music in the park, and I believe York is as well.
Okay.
So Rebecca was next.
Oh, well, having been to many concerts in the park, the Elvis is the one that I only can think of where it was a crowd. There usually isn't a sense that it's crowded at all. And if people move their chairs and their blankets and separate it a bit more, I think it would work. I don't know about the state numbers, but just my experience from having gone to many of these. But my question is, what do the musicians do about social distancing? If they sing or have electrical connections, or what do they do about it?
The 9 bands that I've only had one one cancellation of one band that is not going to be partaking this year. They're out of state, first of all. And then, so again, it's something that we can ask, and we can kind of, you know, figure out a way that we can work with them to kind of separate. So that stage area is pretty.
It's pretty big.
It's a good size stage.
Yeah. The one logistical problem challenge that I'm seeing coming up is we've got a swing band that is a 22-piece band. So they will have to all be spaced apart. However, if they're a swing band, they're not going to be requiring electricity. So they can spread out onto the lawn. And I mean, if they're 22 pieces, that limits us to 27, 8 attendees. Which is all the more reason why live streaming would really come in handy, because people would be able to hear them at home. But I think that's the biggest band that we've got planned on the lineup. Is that so, Jason?
Yeah, it is. But the only thing to keep in mind is that we're talking about 2 months from now. So, I mean, we're talking that band performs in August, and I'm hoping that we're going to move forward with expanding from 50 to higher numbers. So, I mean, that's the thought that we have. I think we kind of have to work with it on a day-to-day basis. I mean, at this point, we're allowed 50, but with the hopes that things will change in a positive direction, that we'll be allowed to have more people. So we don't want to jeopardize any, you know, health situation. We just want to work with what we've got. But I think at this point, like we've been doing for the past couple months, let's just wait and see.
Okay, any other questions? I have one question.
Sure.
For the bigger events, say the Elvis event, again, I've never seen any of them because I didn't move here till recently. Would it be possible for you, or would we be able to do a reservation system, even though it's free? You still would have to make a reservation to garner one of the spots that was available. That could be one idea. The other thing I'm thinking here is, as we go forward, things are going to change. Regulations will change. Edicts will change. Would it be okay so that, and remember, we can go to we can make recommendations to the select board, but maybe we have I'm just throwing it out there, a subgroup of a few of us, so it's not the big 9 group, but a few of us that work closely with you and keep you informed and let you know what's going on, and then we talk about it, and then somebody goes to the select board and says, we worked with the task force, we're doing this on June 28th. It's got this, these are the safeguards in place. Here's what we're doing to keep it, relevant with current law. I'm sure somebody on my team, a few of us would love to be part of a little team that works on this to make it, really efficient and help you get this important thing done. Is that something you'd be interested in?
No, we're absolutely we're excited to get you, to get the feedback. I think it's important. If you guys are focusing on the, the safety part of that, I think it's absolutely that we're open to getting any sort of feedback and direction. Just so that the largest band, or the first band that's of any concern, would be on July 26th. That's the Elvis band. So we're talking we're talking almost 2 months from now. Mm-hmm. So I think things are going to change in the next 2 months. I hope they do. But we can also, another suggestion is figure out another alternative, a bigger spaced area in our town. Something's been brought to our attention, maybe, and then we can approach. The Playhouse has, plenty of green space around their property that potentially we might be able to talk to someone there. There's also maybe the parking lot at the beach, if we needed a larger space. And these are things that, we're open to ideas and suggestions.
Okay. Rick.
Does the size of the space matter if the limit is 50? And I guess we have to look into that, but I'm just wondering if it doesn't matter if we have 20,000 square feet or 40,000, if we can only have 50 people,
in retail, it does. In retail, you can have more. So if you had a Nordstrom's here in Algonquin and you had 70,000 square feet, you could have more people in there and you'd have a people counter as they go through. This isn't considered retail, but I know that they just, as I said, put something out about large gatherings. It's up on the Department of Economic and Development website for Maine. And I have not read that, so I don't know if there's any more definition as to large groups. And I think a lot of them were looking at weddings that may have a large wedding group and stuff like that. Again, keeping in mind social distancing and all. So, that would be, I'd start there, looking at that and seeing what they're saying, because the governor's saying 50 or under, and that goes through the end of August right now. So.
Well, we work with what we got. If it's 50, we'll work with what we've got for now, and with the hopes that things will change.
Okay, so is the idea of a little group to work with you okay, or do you want some? Is that okay for you, Jason and Michelle?
Absolutely.
Okay, so who's musically inclined on my team? Oh, Rebecca's musically inclined and Pam is musically inclined. You are now members of the Music in the Park Get It Done Committee.
We got
more people.
We got Kent.
I'm Playhouse inclined.
Yeah, but you're music inclined too.
I think having Kent on there is great because he can figure out a way to limit the liability and get it done there. That would be great. So I would say Pam, Kent, and Rebecca, you work with Jason and Michelle, And let's have some fun this summer in a
Absolutely.
safe and happy way. Work for everybody. Do I need a motion? No. Thumbs-
Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Yeah.
Bob, if it's okay with you, if I put my email address in the chat box and where people can grab it and then they can contact me from there. I don't know if Jason wants to do that as well.
I'll do that as well.
okay. Hey, Alice, did you just send me a whole list of emails of everybody? I saw something come through. No?
Just sent you Jason and Michelle's emails.
Oh, okay. Got it. So I got it already. Okay. And I see it there. All right. Well, I really appreciate it. I know the select board is very excited about this happening and coming off, and I'm looking forward to going to some of these as well. So appreciate your time. Thanks for coming. And I look forward to the team, the sub team making this all work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Data group, you're up.
Well, what we did this week was a little bit different, but I think it dovetails really nicely into what Charlie started on. So we made a few maps. Matt, if you could put up the first one.
Yep, just give me a second. I got to change out from the original sign posting.
So instead of rattling off numbers, we thought we'd give you a visual picture of this is total deaths in Maine and the states and provinces surrounding Maine. The colors go from light to dark red, which is in the direction of severe numbers. The groupings are a little bit odd in that New Hampshire has 2.5 times as many deaths as Maine, and Quebec has far fewer than Massachusetts, but for the sake of all the broad numbers, we divided them this way. There was also something really positive, mortality for COVID. It may not sound that optimistic, but the deaths from the survival from being in the ICU and having a ventilator went from 20% to a rather grim number, but it's a 15% difference in mortality is actually huge and represents thousands of lives. So going in a good direction. I think this is because people are presenting earlier with their symptoms. Emergency rooms aren't as busy, and healthcare providers have figured out a lot of the unique features of treating people with COVID who are very ill. The second slide is active cases. And the way the states compute this is they take the total number of cases, subtract the people who've died, and the number to get active cases. So it's not a perfect number. And once again, New Hampshire is 2.5 times. But for the sake of the broad range, we've given them the same, I don't know why my internet is unstable, but okay. We've given them the same coloring. And the third map is a crescent that shows driving 55 miles an hour for 2 hours, who can get to Ogunquit. And as you can see, it is all of New Hampshire virtually, and Massachusetts, as well as going north in Maine. Okay, those are those. The other thing that Charlie mentioned, which there was more data about this week, are the so-called super spreaders. There doesn't seem to be a way to predict who is the most contagious amongst us. And it seems that 10% of people who are infected go on to infect 80%. Determines these people who are so contagious is that they have a huge viral load, so that when they're speaking or coughing, they have allergies or whatever, they may have no symptoms of the virus, but they spread it very easily. The length of exposure, which we know is between 8 and 14 minutes as a minimum, and this setting, indoors, poor ventilation, and crowds are the most likely places where a super spreader is going to infect. And the last thing is that Bob asked us to look at mental health and COVID. There aren't a lot of numbers about this, but definitely there is more anxiety and depression. There's more problematic substance abuse, worsening pre-existing conditions, whether they're medical or psychological, more difficulties sleeping and concentrating, and lots of concerns around children and teens. In terms of adults, there are basically three groups. The more at-risk people are worried about illness and dying. People with financial issues are worried about poverty and medical bills. And people in high-risk jobs are worried about infecting their families, their coworkers, and not being able to go to work. And one statistic I found was that 39% of people who have been laid off are in the household income of less than $40,000 a year. So definitely some of the people who earn the least in our society are the ones that are losing their jobs. So some of the suggestions are to, if you're feeling anxious, don't watch the news. Turn it off and do something enjoyable instead, like walk on the beach. And I did find one in Maine, and their acronym is NAMI, N-A-M-I, and I can pass their helpline number on to Charlie and Pam. Maybe put it on the website for anybody who is feeling acutely anxious or depressed and wants to call in. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that would, Pam, I think that would be a good idea to put that website on our website, that link. Thank you, Pam. Pam, you're muted. Pam, still muted.
Nope, I'm muted now. If Becky, you could put together, what I've been trying to do is get educational material up on the COVID update side of on the website. If you could put that down, but also you mentioned things here like mental health issues, simple ways to, you know, get through the day, basically. If you could do some sort of small, less than one page, couple paragraphs, actually bullet points, because people read bullet points easier than they do read long sentences, and just put that down and we could put that up on that too. And
Sure.
Get that to me. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, I just had a quick thought. No need to discuss it, but I'm going to guess that this is a town where there's a lot of things that go on in normal times, like exercise classes, Tai Chi, that kind of stuff. I'm also guessing a lot of people aren't doing those things, or people who did run those things or lead them just aren't doing them because they keep hearing this, don't do anything. But we are starting to open. So no need for discussion, but I'm just, thinking in my crazy brain, is there a way to encourage people who were leaders of these type of activities that do bring mental health benefits to get them to start thinking about, hey, the world is getting better a little bit. Is there, can you take 6 people to the park and have in social distance and have a yoga session outside? I don't know, but I don't know
No,
if we,
that's-
if that's our role, but you know, that kind of thing might be the time to start telling people, hey, you know, let's look for that.
That's a great idea. I noticed, I do yoga and they're gonna do outside yoga in a field. Because the studio is not big enough to do social distancing. So we're gonna be starting on Friday doing that. So, yeah,
Okay,
that's a
good.
great idea.
Charlie,
I
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
also do yoga through a teacher at the senior center and on Zoom right now. But what she's going to do is do both shortly. So there'll be a limited number of people in the physical class and she'll keep the Zoom class at the same time.
Great. Charlie,
All right, am I unmuted?
you're good.
Okay, as the chairperson of the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee in town, people are already doing a lot of this, Bob, on their own. They go by my house a lot, as a matter of fact. And it's great to see people walking, people bicycling, and it's a good, easy way to keep social distance as well, especially on these back roads where I live. People can easily keep, social distance, and there's a lot less traffic than there used to be. So it's not like in the past, like coming through here on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday when everybody's trying to avoid downtown was a nightmare in the past, but there hasn't been that much traffic this year. So it's a nice walk out in the country and a nice bike ride actually as well. So bicycling and walking are two very good options. I know Becky mentioned a walk on the beach, which is always a nice option as well. So anyway, I just want to throw that out there. People are using the back roads a lot as well to get out and get some exercise and keep a good mental health. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay, appreciate that update. Let's go to public health. Carrie Ann and team.
My glasses aren't working, so Buzz and I spent a little time talking about monitoring criteria, and it was really good to hear Matt today reporting back that we're going to have more permanent signs that have clearer messages for the beach, and that high tide cycles are posted so that people will know, who know our beach, when it's narrow. So I'm really glad that that's happening, and I'm guessing that it's happening because of the way the town is collecting information, but I'm not sure how that's happening. So my thinking kind of goes like this. We've focused primarily on three things to achieve 70 to 80% compliance with the three recommendations of the main CDC, and that is social distancing, face coverings when you can, and hand hygiene. The question in my head, when we take a series of actions, trying to achieve a rate that we know limits the spread of infection, particularly and I'm talking about outside spaces, Marginal Way and the beaches in particular, we want to, I think, check in and figure out, are the actions we're taking working? In other words, is the trajectory going up? Are we seeing more and more people who are complying with the guidance? What are we learning from people's actions? What else? What are we doing with what we're learning? And what are we doing if we're not seeing a upward trajectory? What we should look at, what actions have we taken? Is there anything else we can do? So I was thinking primarily about counting, i.e. the numbers, and we have the opportunity to do that on Marginal Way. What I didn't ask Becky in her conversation back and forth with Joan Griswold was they can collect the information, but who's going to get it at the town? Who's going to aggregate it and who's going to look at it? Who's gathering the observational data? I'm calling it data, but they're observations day to day, like Matt reported, marginal way, the observations of the community service officers and on Marginal Way Beach, and who gets that information and who collects it, what happens to it, what is done with it, and what kinds of follow-up is, and if necessary, and I'm talking about the town who is responsible for implementing. So I just am encouraging and urging us to use whatever methods that we can use to gather data to see how we're doing, and then to be able to do mid-course correction if we need to, and to consider the limited resources we have. We really don't want this to be a law enforcement activity. We really want it to be voluntary compliance, which is a tried and true health strategy that works over time, and it takes time for it to go up. So I would maybe ask Matt to either respond to my questions, and then also, in addition to the counters, I know that I've said this before, the police department has a drone, and it might be an objective way in addition to gathering observational data and information from all of our town seasonal employees and others, that a couple of times during a busy beach day, you could see really easily whether people are spreading out, and are there parts of the beach that aren't being used if they're not spreading out. So we could use that information and think about what other kinds of things might we do to encourage people to social.
Ariane, we do not have a drone.
Do not.
No.
That's interesting, because I thought when I raised it before, that the response was that you couldn't use it on Marginal Way because of the drafts. So
Somebody else said that they had a student, I think it was Bobby, said that they had a student who tried to use his on the Marginal Way, and it was a lot of drafts, but I assure you the police department does not have a drone.
okay, well, I had a misunderstanding about that. So then we're depending primarily on the counting data on Marginal Way and the observational data from our town employees. So who else does that, Matt? Who's involved, and how often do they provide the information? Is it daily, weekly? Which people?
We had nothing formalized as far as our CSOs are just reporting generally that what they observe as far as whether there's a lot of people wearing a mask, not a lot of people wearing a mask, and they reported how many masks they gave out yesterday. But I don't have, I mean, we have one person scheduled there like 8 hours a day, and they're walking the path. So I don't know, we're not in the business of collecting data like that. We haven't written any tickets for any issues on the Marginal Way. But we can certainly have the CSOs snap a picture, occasionally, like they had been doing at the beach, to judge how busy that was or what the distancing was looking like. But we don't have a formalized plan as far as counting masks and when it would be considered acceptably socially distanced versus when it wouldn't be. And I don't have a plan for that at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty simple, basic. It's nothing fancy. It's just if you had a systematic way for people to report their impressions to whomever, maybe you or a supervisor, then that is a legitimate way to be able to how we're doing. Or we could encourage residents to send us emails to our email box. How did it look to you when you were out and about? Were there a few people wearing masks, some people wearing masks, or a lot of people wearing masks, or a few people social distancing, or some or a lot? And that observational data is legitimate and of value to tell us how we're doing. So I would just
I'm
urge.
happy to have the CSOs do something like that when they're out and about. It's just
Yeah.
coming up with a formalized system of, at this time, you need to do this. Is our hands are sort of full at this point.
Oh, yeah.
But
Well, you're
we'll,
walking, right? You're out walking
Right.
and they see things and they have impressions.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, it's really just, you know, systematically record impressions to determine over time, are things getting better or are they not? So I get it that you're really busy. I know on Marginal Way, we are going to use some volunteers. So maybe that's another way to think about gathering data. So the other really important thing that's happening in the state is it's really difficult with our little town trying to encourage and engage people in changing behavior. So our state is undertaking an initiative. Buzzy's going to tell you about it, right, Buzz?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
We have the State Health and Human Service rolled out, Keep It Maine, and it's going to roll out. So we should get as much linkage, ideas from them. It'll have a website. It'll have all this. It'll have TV commercials coming out in a couple of weeks. Just Google it, look it up yourself, and that's that.
Buzzy, what's it called?
Look it up. Just Google it. Keep It Maine. Just look anywhere. Health and Human Services. You'll find it.
It doesn't have a special name.
Then Keep It Maine.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand it.
Keep It Maine.
Keep It Maine. Okay, thank you.
And it's basically a public messaging effort that will really help communities achieve increased compliance with the guidance from the Maine CDC. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments around public health? If not, we'll move on to Alice. Business. How is business?
I'll keep this very brief because we've already spent a bit of time talking about this. I did receive something in the chat while we were talking from a business down in Perkins Cove with some suggestions. So I suggested to her, and you'll see this in the chat, that she get in touch with other businesses around her to create a proposal to talk to Pat and to Scott about. So I would encourage any businesses that are interested, if you're a chamber member, certainly feel free to, get in touch with us. But what I want to try and do is work with Pat to just see what kind of system is going to work for her so that she and Scott aren't overwhelmed with 5,000 requests the first day. I do have an email into Pat to just see if she has a system that she would like the business subgroup to use to get out to our businesses in town in terms of how she wants to organize that idea of businesses sharing private space. And then I think we still, as a business subgroup, offline should talk about, any potential, Pat last night called it the Bon Air plan after the event that we had to reschedule that was originally scheduled for June 13th. But the plan there was to close down Shore Road from Route 1 to Crooked Pine and open that up to vendors. And it was going to be a big street festival. We were going to have a stage with bands, things like that. So it basically was a block party with some vendors along Shore Road. So Matt had, and the PD had worked out some traffic flow protocol in the event that we were going to be doing that event. So there's a little bit of work that's been done so far. But that might be something that that I had suggested to Pat this morning, that maybe the business subgroup could start to work on and put some shape to that, if that made sense. So just a couple ideas, but I think if we can get our group together and get some more clarification from Pat as to what our role could be, and if we could have some discussion ourselves about, where we want to go from here, I think that would be helpful. And Rick and Buzzy, anything you want to add?
I just want to say that if you go around town, you'll see that a lot of the restaurants have created some outdoor space on their property. And I think a lot of them have done it really creatively and respectfully. So I want to give them a lot of kudos for what they're doing, because it doesn't look like what people were afraid it was going to look like. It actually looks like it has been like that for a while. So I just want to say thanks to them for doing it the right way. And now let's hope that we can get them it'll get them some business.
Okay. Thank you, Alice. And I can assure you, I will be dining somewhere this weekend. Every damn day. Sorry. At risk, Charlie and Pam. Charlie,
One
Pam.
today. I'm going to take this one today.
Okay.
At our last meeting, we talked about education, and that one of the best things we could do for all populations is to get education out there. And when I said that last week, I said I would look at our website and to see what it said on there and what needed to go on there and what needed to come off. More came off than went on, but at least the old information that was dated in March has now been taken down from the website. And I have to give great kudos to Jordan, because Jordan's, I'll say, Jordan, can you do this? And he gets it done. And Pat also gave me pretty much carte blanche to, long as it was factual information, CDC grounded, and to get things up there. What we did was we moved all our meetings, our videos, and our minutes over onto the COVID-19 update, so that people don't have to dig down 4 or 5 levels to find us. Have things about the marginal way up there, the beaches. That's why when I had asked Matt, I'm ready to go with a new beach one for June 4th, but wanted to add something about parking, and I didn't want to have to say no parking, some parking, whatever. So whatever I can get up there would be great. Taking things one step at a time, put some new information up, old new information, but in a little bit of a jazzier manner on social distancing, trying to do the same thing. Maybe whatever we call it, Alice, I'm not sure that, mental health, or how to de-stress in the time of COVID or something like that, and some suggestions that I've heard. So hoping that, Becky, you can help with that, so that we don't have to recreate the wheel. So I've been spending the last week working on that and working with Jordan to try and make our website, our section of the website, a little bit more user-friendly and take out extraneous stuff and put stuff that's just COVID related in there.
Thank you. Appreciate you getting that all done. Looks good. Okay, item 7 on our agenda is for us to go around and see if there are any comments. We've been at this an hour and 35 minutes, and we still have to get to fishing and bridge directions. Let's start with Rebecca. Any specific comments you want to make?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Ken?
None at this time, Bob. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Pam?
Not at this time, Bob.
Okay, Rick?
All good.
All good. Charlie? Can't hear you, Charlie. Charlie? Charlie?
The one person who has something to say.
Charlie, help me, Charlie. Could somebody else say hello to Charlie? Charlie, there you go.
There.
Still, you're muted, Charlie. I think it was on this side over here.
I got it. I got it.
Oh, there you are. You're on now.
Sorry.
It's
I just
okay.
want to say I really appreciate those people who have contacted me in regards to being, being on the age-friendly community committee for the town of Algonquin. Really could use a few more people. I've had a couple of contacts, and I've been working with Selectman Willett to make this work, and he's been a real big help. So I'm looking forward to having a robust committee down the road here. So if other people are interested, please feel free to contact me, or Pat, our town manager, would be fine as well. So thank you very much. That's all I have to say at this point.
Thank you, Charlie. Alice? No. Carrie Ann?
Yeah, there've been some interesting comments coming through the chat. So I would like to urge some of those people when we go to public comment to come on and share your public comments and not just keep them to chat. So I look forward to it. Thank you.
Buzzy?
No.
No. Okay. I have no comment. No, I do have a comment. What do you guys want to do about fishing? You want us to discuss it? Pam, you want to discuss it? Anybody fishes in this team? Nobody? No fishermen, fisherwomen? No? Okay.
I don't
So
know.
you gotta
Why
think
can't we
about
fish?
fishing in bridge direction.
Why can't we fish? I mean, I think most fishermen are facing the ocean or the water. They're not facing the people that are walking back and forth on the bridge, or they're down by the estuary fishing. So I guess I don't see the
issue, Pam, is that it's not the people who are fishing in the ocean, it's the people fishing off the bridge. And it's that,
but they're facing the water.
but it's
They're not-
people walking by, and I have no
Sorry.
problem with it. I think there's enough room to be very careful, be very aware that there's people there. But I think that the reason that this came up was because of the walking on the sidewalk on the bridge, and that occasionally there'll be a fisherman standing there. And I think it's no different than Marginal Way or just be aware, be careful, be safe. So I think that we should not try to limit something that is again, mental health for some people. It's what they do to relax, de-stress, and enjoy. So I don't think it's any worse than the Marginal Way. So I say we just leave it. The one way on either side, that's a whole other question. That's very difficult on.
Okay. We're not attacking bridge direction flow until we walk down there. I mean, I had a lot of comments on that, but I agree on fishing. Unless anyone here has a major concern about fishing on that bridge and wants to talk about it, I would say do I have a motion to not take up fishing on the bridge? Is that a good way to put it? Rick is so moving. Buzzy is so seconding. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay. Carrie Ann, did you vote either way, or are you abstaining? Now you raise your hand. Is it aye or nay? Aye. Okay, so it's 9-0. Okay, so fishing is still something that should happen on the bridge, and I'll send a message up to the select board. I don't think we need a visit for that. Okay, public comment time. Matt, any hands raised?
Yes, Elaine Cooper has had her hand raised for quite some time. Elaine,
Okay.
if you unmute, should be good to talk. Elaine. So that does not appear to be working. I think it might be a mic problem, although I didn't see it come on. There's no other raised hands currently. If more come up, oh, there we go. Joan Griswold would like to speak. Joan, if you hit unmute, you should be good to go. Joan? So she is there, her microphone is on, but I don't hear anything.
Joan?
Wow.
0 for 2 tonight. Right now, there's no more raised hands. If Joan wants to work on her microphone.
Okay.
Stuff in the chat on the side, Bob, if you wanted to scroll through that or not. I don't know what your plans are, but no other raised hands right now.
All right. Well, there's a lot of chats out there. Interesting things here. Buzzy.
Could I make it just, I was just a thought of suggestion. The sign, like those tractor with the signs that are right in the center of town there, maybe can we put one of them instead of the center of town? Why don't we have it the other end, the south end of town when you're coming in? Just give that sign, give that information there, because I don't know how many people see it when you're coming into the beach there. I mean, it's right on you when you turn that corner. You know what I mean?
Buzzy, yeah, I think we were gonna move one actually down Beach Street further closer to the beach
Oh, good.
for
Good.
tomorrow.
Good.
Somewhere where you can see it not only when you're driving, but when you're walking onto the beach.
Perfect. Perfect.
Original intention, Buzzy, was that we were going to announce lot full or lot not full. And we'll play with that later in the year when things become more and more, say, busy. But yeah, we're moving it down Beach Street, and then I think the thought is to keep the other one kind of where it is now for the northbound traffic coming from the south, to try and capture some of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other hands raised? Matt? No?
There are no other hands raised. Nope.
I'm looking at the chats, and there was one, do signs mention the quarantine? I don't think any of the town signs mention the quarantine. I think that's the state's responsibility, personally.
They did mention the quarantine in the beginning when this all started.
Yeah.
Yeah, we amended it to more local issues.
There's some general comments about monitoring, to be careful. Monitoring has to be done in a way, I think personally, that we don't create the snitch community. We create a database, data-driven. On that note, I know that last time we spoke as a team, there was some conversations at the state level that they were going to break down COVID-19 cases to a more local level. Did that ever occur? Does anyone know about that?
Bob?
Yeah.
Something just came across one of my news feeds that Maine's the only state that does not break it down into local levels, into local towns, and that there was a movement afoot to get that done. So I'm not sure when that will happen, but they're on the radar screen for being the only state not breaking down into towns.
I have a comment about, I have some more information about that. The Maine CDC intends to report by town. The challenge that they're facing is that some of our towns in Maine are so small that if they release the figures, people are going to know who it is. So they are working really hard to figure out, could they do some individual towns, could they do segments of towns, and can they do aggregation of towns so that they can report the data more locally. So still, they are working on it. It's not just under consideration, but they haven't been able to do it. So the difference is we have 4 times as many towns as the state of New Hampshire does. So, that's just an example of the challenges facing our state. to be able to break it down, but they are working on it, and they haven't given us a date yet, a date certain, but they are working on reporting it at a
Okay. So Joan Griswold has checked in with a chat. Can I collect observations from Mass No Mass from people who walk on the, walk on the marginal way, but who should I pass these numbers to? I would say that's Becky and Kent, because they are the data collectors. And then we have one here. Is it possible for our signs to be more friendly? I've heard this a lot. Some of our signs are not as friendly. I think what we'll be seeing from the chamber members will be more welcoming, I think also the new signage should be better. It's a little more professional. It looks a little better. And it does say and state the fact. So wear a mask on the beach. And I saw that sign. So that's not what we're proposing. We're saying wear a mask if social distancing is not possible. So I appreciate that input because I think at some point people are going to have a bad feeling about our town, and we don't want that. We want people to be safe, sound, but we also want our town to flourish. And so I agree with that kind of input. And so Alice, maybe you can go off mute and tell us about some of those more friendly signs you got going.
Yeah, I mean, just in, the tourism chambers have all been sharing the importance of making sure that we have a very welcoming signage because there is, a negative vibe that, the Mainers don't want people out of state coming here. Just that's kind of the unfortunate negative PR that the 14-day quarantine generated. So we introduced our new signage program yesterday. It's actually open to businesses and non-member businesses. Anybody who wants it can have it. We're just asking people to confirm that they will be operating their business according to DECD guidelines, that they will be asking people to wear masks, and that they will be enforcing social distancing. So basically living up to the things that the main CDC and DECD want us to be doing. And that's what they just have to sign off on that. And then we send them the signs, and we're working with the town. The Algonquin Playhouse is lending us their sandwich board signs, so we'll be putting similar signage in strategic locations around town. So we kicked that off yesterday. I sent an email at, I think, 8 o'clock last night, and as of noon today, we had more than 30 businesses that had already requested the signage. So the name of the initiative is called Algonquin Together. So the nice thing is the signs have an Algonquin message on them. So hopefully that'll start to tie the community together as working together to reopen safely. That's kind of the whole idea behind it.
Okay, thank you. All right. I think we got that all covered. I don't think there were any motions other than fishing, and we've covered that. I don't think there are any of the recommendations that we're going to make at this juncture. The question now before you is, do we need to meet every week? Everyone's been putting a lot of time, a lot of effort in. Just a question. I have no opinion either way. Just asking you because you guys are volunteering and putting in your time, and I just want to make sure that I'm being sensitive to those constraints that come from having to do this on a weekly basis. Rick.
I think we're still at a point where we're meeting weekly because things are changing so quickly right now, and I think our town is going to change the population is going to change very quickly, we hope, in the next few weeks. So I think it's kind of important that we at least continue this consistency for now until we see that we don't need to.
Okay. I see a lot of heads nodding in the affirmative on that. Okay, so I won't bring it up until next meeting, and I'll ask again. I just want you guys to be, to be able to say that, this is, we're at a point where we can go to every 2 weeks. But I agree with you, Rick. There's still a lot of moving parts.
And Bob, can I respond to that, to Amy on the chat about wearing a mask, and people are being vicious about wearing masks and not social distancing or blah, blah, blah on the marginal way. It's just a reminder that when the mask is, if you cannot socially distance, it is not, you do not have to wear a mask all through town. You do not have to wear a mask but it's if you cannot socially distance. And so this is sort of a message to everyone out there who, hopefully you're not the ones who are being vicious, but we are trying to respect one another. The masks do show that you care for somebody else on the other side. But if you're walking by yourself and there's no need for a mask, nobody should be really chasing people down for that. I think we just need to be a little more respectful and cautious of each other. A little more kindness would be nice these days. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick.
Bob, I have one question for Alice. If we're going to be meeting every week, one of the things that it's already June the 3rd, we're moving close to July. Do you anticipate us having fireworks this year? Because that will obviously be a challenge to both the town and to the task force and everybody else.
We've canceled the fireworks. Our board recommended that 2 weeks ago. I got in touch with Pat Finnegan and she informed the select board. I'm quite sure Madeline talked about it last night at the select board meeting because she called to ask me ahead of time if she could. And I said, certainly, we've communicated with the town, communicated with the select board. We've dropped it in our member newsletter so our members know about it. So I know she talked about it last night at the select board meeting with the large gathering of 50 still in place. It's just not safe. I naively came from a large geographic town in the White Mountains where people absolutely could, even though the town was at 14,000 beds full on 4th of July, we still had plenty of space to social distancing. So the board got quite a bit of a laugh when I said, why couldn't we just socially distance and watch the fireworks? So they're like, no, you don't understand. So no, fireworks are canceled for this year.
Okay, thank you very much. I did not hear that. I listened to the whole meeting, but I never heard that. So I must have missed it, gone out of the room for a moment. Hopefully, I think that's one thing that we could get that up on our website so that people don't start coming up and planning for that. Not that I don't want them to come up here and use the hotels and the restaurants. Don't get me wrong, but at the same point, I think it might give some people some comfort level too, that they can come up for that weekend and not have to worry about huge crowds with their families.
Okay. So I think we've come to the end here. Thank you very much. Remind everyone restaurants are open and you might see me at one. I have my mask on though, so it's to be disguised.
Are you buying? Are you buying for us if we run into you at the restaurant? You buying for all of us?
Sure. But if you're 6 feet away, I'm not sure I could buy for you. I don't know. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Bob, could I say one last thing before we go? It's, if you would just indulge me for a minute. I'd just like to, as the mother and grandparent of multiracial children and grandchildren, I appreciate so much the statement of Selectwoman Perry at the end of last night's meeting, acknowledging these very turbulent and sad times wrapped around the COVID-19 pandemic with its loss of lives and livelihoods. So I would just like to thank Lindsay, and since we're talking about beaches, and this I know touches many, many lives of people here in Ogunquit. So I just wanted to acknowledge it. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry Ann. So do you have a motion to adjourn? Charlie, seconded by Alice. All in favor? Thank you for your service to the community, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Bob,
Bye-bye.
happy birthday.